What's up, Crowdfunding Nation? Salvador Briggman here. And first of all, I want to congratulate you and commend you so much for showing up to today's podcast episode. On this podcast, I bring on real-world examples, people that are in the trenches right now, entrepreneurs, creators, designers, innovators, the Leonardo da Vinci's of our time who are going out there and ethically impacting the world for the positive. Whether that's coming out with a new business, a new product, a new service, they're there really trying to bring something great into the world. They're willing to dare and to dream big, think big, right? Be willing to push through adversity, show up every single day, even that's necessarily at nights and on weekends. Sometimes they don't even want to, but they're committed to taking action, taking risks, and ignoring the naysayers when it comes to some of those grand visions and ideas that they have in their life. So I commend you for showing up, because right now you're going to get access to the right education and training when it comes to moving your project forward with a crowdfunding campaign or in your own business or in your own life. So this crowdfunding campaign, a lot of times we think, oh, it's just going to be like this one-off event. I've talked with so many different creators and entrepreneurs over the years who are like, I didn't realize that this was an entire process or journey which I was actually going on. And I think that today's podcast episode is a great example of that. First of all, today's episode, when they first launched and they raised capital, raised funding from the crowd, when it comes to Indiegogo, one of the more popular crowdfunding websites out there, they were able to raise over $720,000 from the crowd and continued raising money and continued to then go to the tune of 1.3 million. So on today's podcast episode, first of all, you're going to discover exactly how they did that, the advice that they have for you or someone who's just getting started, and also why they even chose Indiegogo as the platform to begin their journey with. But the journey, like I say, doesn't stop there. They actually decided to then go and launch an equity crowdfunding campaign, which they are now live with, and have already raised over $340,000 using equity crowdfunding to get investors for their company. So a super cool story, and we're going to go through every element when it comes to this particular podcast, and all the ins and outs, the tactics, and the strategy which they used in order to be successful. And if you'd like to follow in their footsteps, first of all, I commend you, like I said, for showing up and getting access to the right information, being willing to surround yourself with the right people, and also having that mindset of being willing to take responsibility, right? When it comes to studying success in the realm of crowdfunding. But if you really want to speed up this process, if you kind of want to skip the line, right? You don't want to have to put in all the work to listen to all of the podcasts and read all of the blogs and watch all of the YouTube videos, and you really just want to paint by numbers formula, which you can follow. I have a great book out there called The Kickstarter Launch Formula. And I put all of my best tips, tricks, golden nuggets of crowdfunding wisdom into the pages of this book. And you can literally just listen to this on the go, on the way to work, while you're cleaning your dishes, whatever it is you're doing, right? And you can download this information straight into your mind. If you want to check this out, I'm actually doing a great promo with Audible, and Audible will give you a free copy of the Kickstarter Launch Formula. If you download a free trial of Audible, you can get a free copy of the Kickstarter Launch Formula. If you want to check that out, you can go to crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That link is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio, and that link will take you there, and you can get a free copy of the book. But if you're not really ready yet to invest in your education and you're just kind of in that learning stage, you're like, you know what, Sal, I would just love to get access to something free that's going to move me forward in this area of my life. I got also a great free course out there that's going to share with you some of the top strategies, resources, and ways in which you can launch your campaign with a bang. So if you've been wondering how to market, promote, how to do the video, the rewards, all that kind of stuff behind a Kickstarter campaign, I got a great free course out there, which you can check out at crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter. That link is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter. Again, that link is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter. All right, guys, without further ado, let's dive into this podcast episode and discover how this individual, this creator, this engineer, this entrepreneur was able to raise over 1.3 million with his Indiegogo campaign, and as well make use of the power of equity crowdfunding. And it's coming up in just a second. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today we are speaking with an entrepreneur and creator who's been able to raise over 1.3 million on Indiegogo for karawater, make pure water from the air. And we were lucky enough to have a member of the team here on the show. Cody, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Salvador. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Definitely, man. Maybe you can fill in some gaps in that introduction and tell the audience a bit about what you're working on.
Sure. So happy to. My name is Cody Soodeen. I'm the CEO and the founder of karawater and the inventor of KaraPure and of our new product, KaraPod, which I'll tell you more about later. But what we're working on is a what we call an air to water dispenser. So what it does is it takes the humidity from the atmosphere or just the room that you're in, and it makes drinking water from it. Really pure, healthy drinking water, and then we add minerals back. So Car Pure, our flagship model, produces 9.2 pH mineral-rich drinking water straight from the air, and it makes about 20 bottles of water per day.
Very cool, very cool. And what were you doing before you were the CEO of this company?
It's a great question. I've always said that I've been blessed with knowing what I wanted to do since I was old as always. I always knew that I wanted to be an architect since I put a piece of plywood in a tree when I was 5 years old. And I literally said to myself, I want to be an architect. Probably didn't even know what that meant, but I knew I wanted to be an architect since then. And
Very cool.
I worked very hard towards that, and I became an architect. Went to school for architecture. It's actually where I learned about this type of technology, and it was my inspiration behind creating Car Water in my sophomore year of college. And since then, I worked towards developing this technology, working on this product and this company. And like I said, 10 years later of working in the architecture field and studying architecture all over the world in New York City on some of the biggest projects in the world at some of the biggest firms in the world. Then I moved to London for 4 years. Well, sent to London as the first employee from my company to go international at the age of
Mhm.
22. And did that for a bit. And then I finally took the big leap, left my architecture lavish job, and then went full time living in a basement, working on
Wow.
car water to
That's insane, dude.
yeah, I gave up a lot for this, and it was totally worth it. Would do it 100 times over.
In thinking about that, would you label yourself as a engineer, as an architect, as a entrepreneur, a creator? How do you identify?
I identify as a designer, more or less. I love design. I've always had a niche for design. I was published at a young age in college, in MSN, TV in Tokyo, in Forbes Tokyo, in Forbes France, I think it was, for designs that done in college. And I just always had an interest in that, but
Mhm.
more so, I was just a big problem solver. I was really good at math growing up. So much so that when I was little, like in elementary school, they had my name on the wall, like painted permanently because I was so
Oh,
fast at like multiplication, math, and division and subtraction. They were called mad minutes. I could do, I think, 90 functions in 1 minute.
that's
Um,
awesome.
so yeah, I've always had like a huge thing for problem solving, and I love design. So putting the two together, I always say I'm like a functional designer. I wouldn't put it in this category of engineers because they say that architects think in circles, engineers think in squares, and that's pretty obvious what that means. So that's where I fall, and I think a functional designer.
Got it. And being someone who can design new products and come up with new ideas and execute, what made you decide to wrestle with this problem, right? When it comes to water, why did you decide to focus on this one?
That's a fantastic question. So I'm a first generation American, and my folks came from Trinidad, and we moved to Pennsylvania in the Poconos, and we have well water. We don't have city water here still to this day. Where they live, we only have city water. I'm sorry, well water. And for years, we had underlying health issues, and we couldn't figure out what it was. And after many, many years, my folks had a doctor who said, "Hey, let's test your well water to see if that might be, there might be something there." He tested the well water, and the results came back with extremely elevated levels of bacteria.
Oh gosh.
Right. And, they were like, shock your well, throw a chlorine tab in there, and it should clear it up. We're like, all right, great. So we should still be able to do it or use it. We did that, and within a few weeks, it was contaminated again. We found out that
Jeez.
because we live downhill from everyone else, everything that's in their groundwater flows into
Hmm.
our well. So it was
Gosh.
impossible for us to permanently fix that problem. So we had to switch to bottled water. And then fast forward a few years later, I'm going to school for architecture and I learn about this little beetle that lives in the driest desert in the world. And the way that it survives is that it climbs up on top of a sand dune. It will perch itself against these really strong gale force winds, and eventually it will start to collect water on its shell.
Mm.
And after it collects enough water on its shell, it does a handstand and drinks the water off its back.
What a smart
And I
creature.
saw that and I was like, the thing is, I don't even think it knows it's doing that. It just
Habit,
figured
yeah.
out that its shell makes water and then it just does it, right? And that's the cool part. Like if this little beetle that doesn't even know how this works or why it's doing this, it just naturally adapted to the environment to create
Hmm.
pull water from the atmosphere to survive. Could do this in the driest desert in the world, so could we. And it would be an incredible innovation that requires no infrastructure. It's locally sourced. And if there's air, there's water. If it's in the desert doing this, then we could probably do it anywhere. And if we could replicate that, it would be game changing. So we were writing a standard research paper for an architecture class, and it was supposed to be on an emerging technology. And instead of writing about an emerging technology, I started studying the shell of the beetle, understanding that its shell had like the best way to kind of explain how this technology works is, do you know the little packets in your shoebox that say
Yeah,
don't eat?
yeah.
Those little packets, that same kind of material is on the coating of the shell of that beetle. Naturally, just
Mm.
kind of has that on there, and that will pull moisture out of the air. So when I realized that was what was on the shell of the beetle, I realized there's actually materials naturally available around us that can do the same thing. And if we can design a product or a system to replicate that function, that's what I wrote my research paper on, was designing this
Hmm.
technology around the shell of the beetle. Got a good grade.
That's
Um,
I mean that's wild. And just to think of all of the ways that, in the past the dots connect, right, going forward. It's so cool to think that that led to what's now your company, right? That you're growing, you came up with a
yeah,
new
I mean, I
product.
definitely never saw myself being in the water space, but here we are.
When it comes to that, for someone who is very focused on numbers, design, certainty, to do something that's a little bit more uncertain and unconventional, to quit a really cushy job to go out there and to start your own thing, what were you feeling? What was going through your head at that point in time?
Well, I think I had read at one point that like Bill Gates still worked at IBM until Microsoft was like a $2 billion company or something. I did. I think I grew up in the era of like hardcore entrepreneurship and like motivational speeches and like you know don't sleep until you get there. Don't take holidays. Don't take weekends. Don't take vacations. And I lived that life for 2 years. So much that I got a tattoo to like commemorate that. Um, and I just lived nights and weekends doing this business. And I would sleep for like 2, 3 hours a day for almost 5 years. It was incredible, like how dedicated I was to this until I was like, I don't even have enough time in the day because I still have to work a day job. I finally
Hmm.
need to quit. But for me, I never really saw it as risky. I think I just have this mentality where I knew I wanted to do something. Just like I said, I knew I wanted to be an architect since I was a kid, and I just worked towards that goal. It wasn't a risk to me.
Got it.
Even quitting my job really wasn't that much of a risk because I just saved up enough to kind of live for like 2 years, I guess. And if I ran out in 2 years, which I did, I would figure it out again, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So it sounds like that willingness to actually push through those feelings and to go after what you want, that resilience has been a big part of your life.
Totally, totally. Honestly, like it's been a huge part. I mean, I would be doing crazy experiments in my apartments with my roommates, like a mad scientist, and they'd be like, "What are you doing? Like, can I even be here while you're doing this? Like, are you gonna blow the house up?" And I'm like, honestly,
Parents must have loved that. Yeah. Cool, man. So, I mean, at what point did crowdfunding and Indiegogo, when did that begin to enter the picture and why did you pursue that avenue?
my partners and I have always thought crowdfunding was cool. We always were like, wow, this is so amazing. Like, it's such a visible product. Like, it's a great way to go viral. I think this is what before, like, the word viral was around, like, way when I first started thinking about it. And I always knew that our product had, because I'm a designer, I know like what, because we'd have designed in like our digest and um just like all these big viral magazines and things like that would always talk about projects. So I kind of knew how to design for virality because I worked for
Hmm.
these companies and I knew my design skills were there. So, and I had gone like, done designs, been published. I kind of had this idea of how to do it. But at the same time, it came 10 years later. It was literally like the 10-year mark of me doing this business. And to be honest, it
Hmm.
was like at my breaking point of being like, well, you know what? I could have so much in my life right now in architecture, be living in London where I want to be, and like doing all these things that, you know, any aspiring
Person.
executive could be
Yeah.
getting towards. Like I could have been running the entire European division by 2026,
Hmm.
27. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And
Yeah.
I was speaking to a friend and we were working on the crowdfunding campaign. I was just about to like take a leave. And I was speaking to a friend and saying, you know what, like this is probably my last attempt at doing this, and I might just, go full time in architecture afterwards. And they said to me, that you could have all of these things that you want in architecture and like the life that you might want, but you'll always regret never seeing through what you've worked so hard on. And
Hmm.
no joke, within 10 days, we launched the campaign and it was extremely successful. It went to like
Wow.
100K in like a few days, and then we got to the 1.3 million in I think 70 days. So it
Hmm.
was like those little words of advice from that friend and encouragement that really helped push me through that moment. Although the 10 years was me just like really falling to get there. But
Hmm.
that crowdfunding really set us on a trajectory to put us where we are today, honestly.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned in sort of our pre-interview was this idea that you don't know as much as you think about your own product, right? Until it's really out there with the audience interacting with it. I was wondering if you could speak to that and sort of elaborate on what you meant by that.
Yeah, that's honestly that's probably the biggest learning lesson that I've had. And I think I said like you don't know what your product is like until it's in the wild. And it's so true. I prototyped and did experiments for literally 10 years long. And I was like, I know how this works. Like I know this technology, right? And it's not just the technology, it's all the other parts that make your technology work. Sure, I can pull water from the air, but can you drink it? Can you add minerals back to it? Can you store it safely? Can you transfer it from the storage tank to the spout? What does that look like? Like, what does transportation look like in shipping and logistics and packaging, and how are other people going to handle your product when you hand it over to a shipping company or last mile to provider, or how's it going to work like across the sea? There's so many things you just don't know, and learning it all for the first time, you may think you know it all, but you 100% don't. You
Hmm.
literally don't know anything. You know just about your product, about the technology. You don't actually know how other people are going to use it. You don't know
Hmm.
where they're going to keep it. I mean, I visited a customer one time because I was just like going around learning about customers and their experience and servicing some of their units. And one lady had like 15 little small dogs in her house, no joke, just by herself. And the entire floor was covered in puppy pads. It was bizarre. And the unit was filthy. It was disgusting. And I just remember like I got there and I cleaned the whole thing, like took out everything, wiped it down, cleaned it. Like I don't know what was on it, but it was gross. And I was like,
Yeah.
these are just the things you'll never think
You'll never
about.
imagine it. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. And these kinds of things happen way more than you think it does. And then
Hmm.
they give you a call and they're like, "Oh, my unit has this issue," and you're like, "Well, what happened?" You go through the standard questions and they kind of give you the answer, and then you get
Didn't
there and
cover
you're
the
like, "This,
puppy questions. Yeah.
no, you
You didn't do
didn't."
that.
You know?
Got it. So it sounds like to you, in terms of for people for creating products, you should be very, very open-minded and sort of keep the idea in mind that it's going to be flexible, right, as you're going, and you're going to learn more about your customer base kind of as you're going with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to learn about your product for the very first time, essentially, because you've only done what you've done in a controlled environment and a controlled space. I mean, I meet entrepreneurs now in like the water space, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're launching soon." I was like, "Did you think about this?" They're like, "Oh no, we've solved that." I was like, "You definitely trust me, you
Hmm.
haven't solved it. You should really think about it based on what I've experienced, because you're going to
Hmm.
experience it too." And you only get that with having hundreds of units or thousands of units out in the wild.
When you start to have people actually interact with this, back it on Indiegogo, have people become one of your backers, what did that feel like for you, unveiling this to the world? What did that feel like?
Was incredible. I mean, we're a very data-driven company. We're not very emotionally driven, so we did a lot of um, pre-testing, like test the water stuff, and we hired a marketing agency. I learned from other people who did crowdfunding and failed, or did crowdfunding and were successful, and both of the sides of the spectrum were like, you need to hire a marketing agency. Like, you can't do it on your own, and you need a massive email list. You need a lot of like you need a lot of things kind of just set up for success before you even launch the campaign. And so we
Hmm.
did all of that. And you want to crush your goal the first day, you want to hit X numbers and milestones like your first week. You just want to keep have week I had bi-weekly meetings with my marketing agency in Armenia at 5 in the morning, twice a week.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
it was tough, but when it launched, I think I was in Hawaii, and it was just such an amazing experience to check it every single morning and like kind of check it periodically through the day. I was so on top of answering questions on the discussion board because it was so exciting to hear what people had to say. I mean, some people ask like the craziest questions, and you're like, wow, I never thought about that. Also, it's irrelevant, or maybe it is relevant. And it's just really exciting to see how people are like, I've been looking for something like this for so long. I've only found products that I want to put in my closet, not in my like foyer, like living room. I'm so excited to
Mhm.
see something like this. And there were a lot of people were like, I love alkaline water. Like my wife drinks it for this reason, or I drink for this reason. Like, and it's like, wow, all the things that we thought of that took 10 years to really put together into this one now packaged product make sense. And people are, it's resonating with people, and it's not like a shot in the dark. It took a
So
lot of,
cool.
like I said, planning to get there.
Yeah, so cool, and just to also hear from other people who are passionate about the same problem and solution you are, like, must definitely feel very cool. If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist, fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. One of the other things you mentioned is this idea about transparency. And I think there's a lot of murky waters when it comes to crowdfunding because there's some really epic fails and some people, who have kind of tarnished their reputation there. What are your thoughts on this concept of transparency and why is that important?
Yeah, totally. After our campaign was so successful, I think we're the most funded air to water dispenser ever. Um, there have been other companies that have come out, and I'm like doing air quotes, that have come out, and to me they seem like clear scams, and
Mm,
they pretty much copied our copy word for word to build their page, um, and launch their campaign. Both of these like two of them raised a 250,000, and I don't think they're real companies. They were very communicative during the campaign, and then after the campaign was over, they're very generic in their responses, not posting updates for almost a year and a half, 2 years almost now, and that money's probably gone, and I feel bad, but that muddies the water a lot because we worked very hard to make sure people didn't feel that way. And I saw other companies that have done that, like fake companies. And I was like, you know what? I wouldn't want to be in the shoes of somebody who just spent a decent amount of money and not get communication on what I just purchased. Or
yeah.
the other side is like, I just spent 10 years on this. I want to make sure that I take care of the people who took care of me and
Hmm.
supported me. So I always look at like my customers or backers as our biggest supporters. My business partner and I always say that they're our biggest supporters. So they're always our number one priority. So we made that a priority in our business to make sure that we communicated effectively. We're extremely transparent of like the ups and downs, like the hurdles, the progress, anything that we could communicate that we would. One thing I did learn though was like not there is a degree of over communicating unless you know exactly what's happening. Like this is the exact thing that's going to
Hmm.
happen. You don't want to have to say something and then step back and then have to say
Ah,
something different, right?
yeah.
So you want to communicate, but you want to keep it to the sense of like this could happen in X, Y, and Z way versus like this is how it's going to happen. And then you're like, oh, no, actually, this is happening. So that was definitely a lesson learned because we wanted to communicate so much and communicate like very effectively with photos and videos and a lot of my personal face on there just to be like more personally connected with the backers was really important. So like doing AMAs a lot was really important. Doing like we did AMAs like once or twice a week.
Hmm.
Um, and that was really important and it actually led to conversions. Not gonna lie, like it was really cool because it led to conversions. But I also was really happy to talk about the product because people would ask us questions live on like a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live, and I could answer them, and I'd see a conversion happen from that person, like right there. But also that video would get posted so that people would
Hmm.
be able to go back to it and then see like, okay, here's some questions I might have. Let me check this 1 minute video, 2 minute video, and oh,
Hmm.
that answers my question. Now I'm happy. So being able to provide as much information as possible was great for the backer, but also it made me feel more comfortable letting people know like this is exactly where we are. I'm not like misleading you. I'm not keeping you in the dark. I want you to
Yeah.
be exactly where I'm at, you know?
What I like about that is I think a lot of creators and designers like yourself might shy away initially from interacting with the community because they're afraid people might, send hate or something like that. But you kind of leaned into it and were just honest and transparent about the challenges and problems and solve them right as you were going with it. And I think that's a smarter approach. Yeah.
I think a lot of people try to take it as like this corporate response that they're very generic and like try to stay away from numbers and dates and things like that. I was the complete opposite. I was very personal in my responses. I was very personal in my updates. I was very active in responding to customers and speaking to them and handling customer service in the early days. Like I just took a very like forward approach to that. And I think that was really helpful with our backers. It took a long time to
Hmm.
deliver because it's a very complicated product, but the entire
Yeah.
time our customers were very happy.
One of the more, I guess, contentious or under discussion items in the industry is this idea between Indiegogo and Kickstarter. And I would love to get, just a bite size of your thoughts as to why you chose this platform, Indiegogo, right, to launch the campaign, and what kind of led to that choice.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. Like I mentioned, we're currently running a Start Engine campaign, and there's tons of different platforms. There's Indiegogo, Kickstarter, definitely the two main uh, product-based or rewards-based crowdfunding. And
Mhm.
I think Kickstarter was the original one, and everyone was super excited when that came out years and years ago. And I loved the concept. And then Indiegogo came along. It was like the Lyft to the Uber, and everyone liked the same colors, which I thought was kind of funny. But
Yeah,
so when I Indiegogo, I just saw more technology at the time that we launched, and Kickstarter was like more like games and books and movies and stuff like that. So I was like, this doesn't really fall into our category of what we're trying to do. Although I
hmm,
do think there has been a shift towards Kickstarter now, for more products, which Kickstarter started off products, then it moved to like more kind of like
creative.
non-product things. And then Indiegogo is definitely the technology place to be at the
Hmm.
time. Like there's more e-bikes and solar panels and batteries and smart technology, right? And I was like, that's what we want to be because that seems like the right audience. So it was definitely based on the
Got it.
audience that I thought would resonate with our product.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously both are great and have different communities. So, thank you for highlighting that. To kind of jump a little bit to a different topic here, one of the things you mentioned was this idea of doing equity crowdfunding, which is like super new. And I was surprised that you guys are running a campaign, which is so cool, right? The fact you're giving people the opportunity to invest in your company. Could you just share very quickly, what made you decide to give people that opportunity? And, what does this entail with this campaign?
Yeah, of course. This is also something I've always wanted to do in the space of like crowdfunding. It's the website's startengine.com/offering/karawater. And the reason that we did it was, again, we went through like the WeFunder, the Republic, there's Angel something or whatever. There's a bunch of different equity crowdfunding. WeFunder is like the original, but Start Engine has the largest audience base, and they just acquired, I think, Angel List or something like that, which had like 2 million active investors or 2 million in their investor list. So they had the largest audience. So again, I went based on audience. So equity crowdfunding is like how many people can you get in front of who are either accredited or not accredited investors, and you can, you know, get yourself in front of that many people. And we have a D2C product, so it resonates well with the average consumer. So going with the largest audience made the most sense to us. And they also were full service, which was great. So we went with WeFund, I'm sorry, with Start Engine, and the reason that we wanted to do another crowdfunding is that we knew we were successful in this space before. We already have experience here. We have an audience that's already in the crowdfunding space, quote unquote, and
Hmm.
they would feel more comfortable, investing in us in a crowdfunding space versus just picking up the phone and calling them, which we did as well. And a lot of our customers were some of our biggest investors, like supporters as well. Um, so doing another crowdfunding campaign was a reason why we did it. We know the space, we're good at this, let's do it again.
What I love about it as well is that people who see the success, of your Indiegogo and your company, your brand, they want to participate in your next success, right? And they really want to have ownership. You're giving people that rare opportunity, which not a lot of people do get access to something like that. So I love the way you're kind of democratizing that and, giving an ordinary American the ability to own shares in the company. Very
Yeah,
cool.
just to elaborate on that, I'll say like it's not that we didn't try the VC path. We did. We hammered, like we knocked on every door, turned over every stone. We met with 50 or 60 VC firms, and I've traveled all over the world to meet with them. Like even went to Japan and did things like that. And it's, hardware is hard. CPG is like very difficult space. People don't invest there. VCs want a software company with a quick return that's going to be some imaginary unicorn for 2 years and then go bankrupt. That's how I see it at this point. Like it's ridiculous. So we
Yeah.
have a great product, we have a great margin, we have a great revenue, we have a great ROAS, we have a great ROI. We checked all the boxes, but they were just like, you're too early. And every time they would say, hey, if you get to this milestone, we'll consider investing. Then we get there, like,
Mhm.
hey, we re-engage, and they just kick the ball further down. They're like, oh well, oh no, we really want you to get here. Oh no, we really want you to get here. And it was constantly just wasting our time. So, it took us a while to commit to the Start Engine campaign, but I wish we'd have done it earlier because to me, it's just a non-traditional way of raising funds. And like you said, democratizing it, allowing these retail investors to come in. For me, these retail investors also become customers of mine and brand ambassadors, which I think is
Yeah.
awesome. And it's also a lot of people's first investments, which I love that as well, because investing is a really important part of life and being like financially free and whatever. But
Mhm.
I love being the first person that can talk to them, explain to them what it means to invest into an early stage company, like the potentials, the risk, like the value investing, the impact investing, blah, 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 things like that. And it really opens up a new side. And then they go out and invest in all the things, not even just my company, but they learn about that space and they get into this new avenue of like generating revenue for themselves but investing in things they believe in. So I think it's pretty cool to be able to, have that kind of impact
Yeah.
in people's lives as well.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. I had one other question on this point, which was in comparing the Indiegogo to the Start Engine or to the equity crowdfunding campaign. How long would you say the roadmap was to that? Would you say it's the same length, or the equity crowdfunding was shorter to be able to launch it? What would you say in terms of the roadmap between those two?
Um, so with crowdfunding, it's the campaign page that takes a long time and like the kind of pre-launch stuff that you're doing, and building that audience who's gonna back your product and company. For equity crowdfunding, we did it really fast just because we were at a different place in the business at that point. But there's a lot more regulation. Like you have to go through full SEC regulatory things. You have to do like it's pretty much like as if you're an IPO company. You have to go through that kind of filing.
Mhm.
Um, and that took a lot of cleanup, like a lot of
The
cleanup.
books.
The
Yeah.
books, like, yeah, you have to clean up a lot of things that some stuff you didn't even know were existing. Like we had to file with Edgar, which is an SEC compliatory database, and we weren't like we had never done that before, and we found all
Mhm.
these things that we were missing that we had to do, and we just never even knew that they were a thing that we had to do that in the
Yeah.
past that should have been getting done. So it was actually a really good thing for us to get that all put together and cleaned up. And now our business is in a really good position, like well placed for also for venture backing eventually, which we plan to go move into eventually. But it was both
Good
quicker and
experience.
harder.
Yeah.
It was because it was things we've never done, but it was faster because we were in a different
Yeah, it
place.
sounds like there's more like there's more paperwork, it sounds like, on the financial side, and like kind of figuring out that piece of the equation with the equity. And then the Kickstarter or the Indiegogo was more pre-launch and marketing, from what you've
Yeah.
said, it sounds like.
By the time we did Start Engine, we knew our business, we knew our brand, we had all of our brand assets. We have a brand booklet, we have a media kit, we have all this media attention. It was a lot easier to build a campaign that was like, this is a great company versus like, here's a company that just started. It's
Yeah.
not in that space anymore.
So cool, man. I really appreciate you sharing a wealth of information, when it comes to this. Where can people go to learn more about your campaign? Also, your website, where can they go to learn more about you?
Yeah, so you can check us out. I would recommend you check out the Start Engine campaign first at startengine.com/offering/karawater. And that's where you'll get the most information about the company, accolades, history of the technology, the team, and if you want to learn more about the whole overall picture. If you want to check out our products and our website, you can go to karawater.com. And I don't think we talked about it, but we have a new product that we're launching called CarPod, and I am calling it the world's first self-refilling coffee machine, where we've taken our technology and applied it to a coffee machine that self-fills its own water tank. And it's going to be
Ooh,
quite disruptive, I believe, in the coffee machine space. But it also, because again, we are drinking water, it is also a drinking water device that will produce up to 7 bottles of water per day. So it's great for your college
that's really
kids who need
cool.
both coffee and water. Um, just to plug it there. And you can check that out at carpod.com. and you can reserve it now.
That would definitely improve my productivity as well. Being able to
Yeah,
have a self refilling, coffee machine, and also the water aspect for sure. Very cool,
mass
man.
market priced as well is just super important for us to get this out there. It's only priced at $2.99.
Love it. Love it. So my final question for you, and we can end on this note. You can either end with a final tip about crowdfunding. It could be a quote that you like, or just a word of encouragement for other creators and entrepreneurs out there. We can end on any of those and end on that note.
Yeah, so one of my favorite quotes that I lived by to get to where we are today was, I said this at a conference one time, was someone asked me, how did you get to where you were? Like, how are you so committed to your business? And, a lot of people have goals, but they don't achieve them, right? And they always say, a goal without a plan is just a dream. But what I say in comparison to that is, a lot of people want to live by their own rules, but nobody wants to make rules to live by. So for me, I made rules to live by, and I swore by them, and I lived like that for years, where I would minimize the amount of things that I was focused on, the amount of activities I would be doing. Don't get me wrong, I traveled like a ton, because at that time I was living in London and I went to like 28 countries, but that was very like strict timing. I would go when I had like a specific weekend of the month that I had time to do it. But outside of that, I just focused, and I had these rules that I would focus on, times that I would sleep, or amount of time I'd spend on my business in the evenings or the weekends, or the amount of times I would hang out with people or have a social life at the time, if I had any. But there was very strict rules that I lived by, and those rules allowed me to live by my own rules versus by somebody else's. And I think that's a really important thing to think about, especially when you're an entrepreneur, because the difference between an entrepreneur and an employee is time management and being able to self-manage. So you have to have rules to self-manage. So make your own rules, and it'll make it a lot easier to get to where you want to be.
Well said, Cody. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. I'll be sure to link up everything in the show notes.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Salvador.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman, or Sal, hailing in from Miami, Florida. Whether you're in the United States, one of the colder states at this time of the year, or you are around the world, thank you for tuning into this podcast. I want to share a bite-sized story with you, and also a killer resource for anyone who's interested in being successful with crowdfunding. So this kind of takes me back a number of years to when I actually first started one of my favorite sports, which is fencing. So I was a foil fencer, and I did that for 10 years. For those of you who don't know, fencing is kind of like sword fighting, right? It's a little bit different. There's different weapons. There's epee, saber, and foil. And I was a foil fencer for 10 years. And for many of the years when I first started with fencing, I was just going to normal classes. I was taking fencing classes. I was doing a tiny bit of practice at home, and I was seeing like minimal results. But all of a sudden, one time, my fencing coach, who was actually went to the Olympics for fencing, she told me that she was going to have an incredible option available for students. And if you wanted to, you could upgrade, and you could actually get personalized training directly from her. And most students weren't really that interested in it, but I did want to get better at this sport. So my mom actually allowed me to do that. And I was so grateful, obviously, to her to let me do that. So every single week, every time after class, I would get these personalized sessions with Molly, who was my fencing coach. And I will tell you, I learned so much. It was like an incredible light bulb moment that went off in my head, because I instantly started to get better and better and better as the weeks were going on. And it's because I just understood the subtlety of some of the different strategies and techniques when it came to the sport of fencing. I started to get better and more excited as well. And the energy from this coach kind of like bled through that, and like I felt that as well. And I started to actually train as well at home and work on my stance and work on my movements, right, when it came to the sport of fencing. So I fell in love with it, and I started to do really well. I started to do great at competitions, and lo and behold, within a year, I was absolutely killing it when it came to the sport of fencing. That's something I did for a long time. And I only really stopped as I got older, because it's lugging around fencing equipment in Miami. It's very hot, obviously, but it's still something that I love. So I tell you that story because a lot of the times we are just one step away from that accelerated learning curve when it comes to being successful in an area of our life. Whether that's fencing, whether that's learning a sport, or crowdfunding, business, a startup, growing and marketing your product, getting worldwide attention. There's only so much that you can learn on your own. And like I said, so much, it's great that you're showing up and listening to these podcasts. But if you really want to put this on turbocharge, I decided very early on when I started this podcast to make myself accessible to select students who are really driven, hungry, and invested in their success, and to give you that same opportunity to, again, put this on turbocharge. So what I'm talking about, what I'm referencing is my individual one-on-one coaching calls. If this is something where you're getting serious about your campaign, or even just want to figure out very early on, what is the right strategy? What is the right platform? Is this even viable when it comes to crowdfunding? And again, you really value your time and you want to make fast progress towards your goals, go and check out my individual coaching call option, because these are intensive, strategic, and tactical sessions that you will walk out of with just tons of insights, knowing exactly what to do every step of the way when it comes to launching, and also advice and feedback on your current assets and where you are. If you want to learn more about that, go to the link I'm about to mention at crowdcrux.com/coaching. That link will take you there to a form which you can fill out that form. Tell me more about you. Tell me about what you're passionate about, what you're trying to accomplish, and we can get that call scheduled ASAP. Again, if you want to check that out, go to crowdcrux.com/coaching, and that link will take you there. Do it now if you're serious about this. Don't put this off, because I'm telling you, this can have a huge effect on the trajectory when it comes to your campaign and building the foundation for your project right. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. And if you did enjoy, give me a positive rating and review. Would love to have you check out my free podcast out there on Spotify and iTunes, and also on YouTube. I also have a blog, crowdcrux.com. You can see some of the free articles that I have there as well. But thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Sal, and I will see you next time.